Good afternoon. We are very excited to be here today to announce some policy changes in the Minneapolis Police Department that will advance the cause of equity and advance the cause of standing with our transgender neighbors and community members. There's no denying that there is an ugly national climate about a whole bunch of issues right now, including the rights and the humanity of transgender people. They are human beings with rights, and that conversation should end about whether or not that's true. They are facing higher levels of discrimination and higher levels of violence, disproportionate, and that also has to end. And what we're here to talk about today is some policies that will help advance that cause that are in amongst much of the work that we are doing here at the City of Minneapolis. We are building on a 40-year legacy. The City of Minneapolis was the first city to have a transgender equity non-discrimination policy in 1975. We are proud to be building on that legacy here in the state of Minnesota. We have our trans equity work group that has been in place for a couple, 3 years now. There have been many changes made, policies moved forward, led by the community, working with allies, and today is another one of those days. I'm also proud to say that tomorrow will be the third annual Trans Equity Summit, and that is going to be happening tomorrow. All of this work is trans folks, allies, organizations like Out Front, who's represented here today, the city, and the Minneapolis Police Department for this particular policy have come together. All of it is a community effort and a group effort, and we are proud to stand here together to advance this work together. Today, as I said, is a partnership of the trans community and allies, Out Front Minnesota, the City of Minneapolis, the Mayor's Office, and the Minneapolis Police Department. And Chief Harteau will be giving more information specifically about what the policy change is. But it is important to say, and it cannot be said enough, from the leadership of the city and from the community to our trans residents and to trans people everywhere. We see you, we hear you, you are us and we are you. You are our friends, you are our family, you are our community, you are our neighbors. We are proud to stand with you, and we are proud to stand for you in the work that we do at the City of Minneapolis, whether it be work on our facilities, work on our language, or work on our policies in the Minneapolis Police Department. So here to talk about that policy is Chief Harteau.
Thank you, Mayor. So, as most of you know, if you don't, you should know, the guiding principle for the Minneapolis Police Department is we want officers to always ask the question in every interaction, in every encounter, did my actions reflect how I'd want a family member to be treated? Okay, and so to do that and to continue to build relationships, it's about learning, growing, and understanding the people we serve. And in the city of Minneapolis, we have an increasingly growing number of transgender and non-conforming people in our city, and we need to be able to connect with them properly. And so today we're announcing the policy that is titled Interactions with Transgender and Gender Non-Conforming Individuals. The purpose and premise in the policy is to, based on courtesy and respect, these guidelines will outline appropriate treatment of transgender and gender nonconforming individuals who come in contact with Minneapolis police officers. That will include definitions, and you will all get a copy, forms to address, including pronouns in which people want to be identified as, identification, our search and arrest process and procedures, medical treatment, and then of course we will be training officers in the policy. The policy is several pages long, outlining it. As things become more current and updated, because they will change on a continual basis, we will update those policies. In addition to the policy and the training, we also have a new community engagement team member that is assigned specifically to the LGBT community, and that is Renee Lewis, who's here today. So we have to continue to evolve and grow, and I'm proud to be standing here with our partners here today who have really helped us to put together what should be in the policy, and they can answer even more questions. So it's my honor to introduce Roxanne Anderson, consultant and community organizer.
Thank you, Chief. Hello, everybody. I am really honored to be here today as a community organizer and the board chair of the Minnesota Transgender Health Coalition. It's been a wonderful journey to sit in a room with folks who are interested in making change. As part of the transgender work group, the city of Minneapolis looks to community members and to folks to have influence and to provide information. When I was the Trans and Racial Justice Director at Outfront Minnesota, it was my job to work on this policy. And that job was afforded by being able to be part of community organizing and community efforts. That process of bringing information from constituents into a room full of organizers, activists, and policymakers has been invaluable. This policy is not something that just got created overnight. We've worked on this policy for quite a while. This policy is an accountability measure. It's a tool. It's a tool to inform of expectation. It's a tool for citizens to use. It's a tool for neighbors and residents to use. And it's a tool for officers and those folks in the city who've been elected to make sure that we are putting our best foot forward, to make sure that the city of Minneapolis is living its will, that we want to make sure that everyone that lives in Minneapolis feels safe, secure, and comfortable, and has the resources to make sure that they have a channel to connect, to hold that accountability, and to be able to reach out to each other so that we can make sure that we're all doing our best. This policy means to trans folks a way to be able to let officers know who they are, to be able to say, my pronoun is they or them or she or her or him. So everybody who's in a situation in which officers are reacting can hold a line of respect. And so to be part of this group of people who continue to make sure that the city of Minneapolis is putting its best foot forward has been great honor. Even this morning, as we prepared for this press conference, we shared ideas. We reminded each other of who we are and why we were in the room. And that feels really good as a trans and gender non-conforming person who lives in Minneapolis, to know that the people that I've been engaged with in this process actually care about me and my friends. Thanks a lot. Let me introduce my good friend and buddy. And I cannot believe that I totally turned around and forgot to introduce my colleague and longtime buddy, Phil Duran.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Phil Duran, Legal Director for Outfront Minnesota. If you're not familiar with Outfront, we're the state's largest organization that works for full equality for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer individuals and their families. We've been doing this work for almost 30 years. We've been based at the Sabathia Community Center in South Minneapolis for the entire time. And we're very, very pleased to be here. The mayor mentioned in her comments the 40-year legacy of the city of Minneapolis, leading the nation in terms of passing municipal non-discrimination protections to protect transgender individuals. We built on that legacy over 20 years ago when the state of Minnesota then adopted a very similar language into the Minnesota Human Rights Act. We were the first state in the country to provide discrimination protections, very broad ones, to transgender individuals here in Minnesota. And I think what these events tell us is that the understanding of the transgender population evolves, the needs evolve, and the understanding of how best to respond from a public policy standpoint also evolves. And today's conversation is just the latest iteration in that. There are a handful of cities in the country that have done anything like this, and we're proud that Minneapolis is one of them. When the Minneapolis police reached out to Outfront earlier this year to ask for our input, both myself and Roxanne at that time, I was very impressed with the fact that they provided not just some bullet points and said, can you help us fashion a policy? They suggested a fairly comprehensive draft already. They asked for our input and our suggestions, and we gave them. We offered some ideas about where a particular phrase might actually not be helpful, where strengthening it could work better for the city of Minneapolis and for our residents. And the Minneapolis police were very responsive. And so we're really happy that they have taken so many of the suggestions that we put forward and that others have put forward to make what I hope is going to be a very strong and effective policy for the Minneapolis police, for the city, and for the residents here in the city. Will this policy answer every question? Will it respond and address every conceivable situation that could arise? Probably not. It is plausible that in the coming years some kind of scenario will unfold where this policy just hasn't anticipated it. And so we'll continue to work with the city, with the police and the mayor's office to respond appropriately to those kinds of situations. But at Outfront, we take heart from seeing this kind of program, this policy, the commitment of the Minneapolis police, the commitment of the mayor's office and the city council as indications of where the city wants to go and how it wants to interact with the LGBTQ communities. We're proud of that. We look forward to that continuing. If there was one thing in this policy that I would like to lift up from our perspective is that it's heartening to see the policy recognize, and I think Roxanne touched on this in their comments, about pronouns and how more and more people are using gender-neutral pronouns, and that even though that is an evolving process, this policy anticipates it, and I think it positions the police well for recognizing where the conversation is going to go. So we're proud to have been a part of this. We look forward to seeing it roll out and the implementation proceed. And with that, it's a pleasure to introduce Andrea Jenkins, who was a policy aide here at City Hall and is now the Transgender Oral History Project Director at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities.
So, good afternoon. My name is Andrea Jenkins, and as Phil mentioned, I worked in this building for about 12 solid years as a policy aide to a couple of city council members, the current city council vice president Elizabeth Glidden and former city council vice president Robert Lilligren. And so I've had an opportunity to work on a number of policies and issues that affect the lives of Minneapolitans, transgender and otherwise. But this particular policy is one that I am immensely proud to have been a part of. I think that it not only will impact the lives of transgender people that live in the city of Minneapolis, but hopefully it will impact the thinking of police departments all around the country as they interact with the transgender community and gender non-conforming folks. I really want to acknowledge and give a deep thanks to Mayor Hodges and Chief Harteau for their leadership from the top. We know that when there is deep commitment from the highest levels of policymakers, then that in turn creates awareness for the people who are actually implementing the policies. And so thanks to both of you for your unwavering commitment to the transgender community.